Welcome back to the Somatic Hound podcast. And today I have a special guest with me, and her name is Laurie. I actually forgot to ask you how to pronounce your last name.
Oh, it's in Dutch, it's Janssens, but you can say Janssens. That sounds more American, I think. So
it's Janssens.
It's Janssens, correct.
Okay, Laurie Janssens.
Yeah.
And we connected on Instagram because I had heard about German New Medicine on a different podcast that I listened to. And all of a sudden it like resonated with me because it seemed to match up exactly with what I was trying to explain was happening with people and their dogs, and the dog mirroring their energy and behavior, and even taking on sometimes the physical ailments of their owners. And I'll let Laurie speak more about that. So I was looking on Instagram for German New Medicine practitioners to just follow and learn more. I found Laurie, and we kind of like instantly hit it off, and I asked her to be on the podcast. So Laurie teaches people about their natural ability to heal themselves, and that is her mission with her work in this life. She does use German New Medicine, but also EFT, which she can explain a little bit, and does a type of intuitive coaching. So with that introduction, I would like to just turn it over to you, Laurie. And if you have anything else to add to that, or if you want to just jump right into the whole topic, which is, I know, a very big topic, but if you want to give like a little introduction.
Yeah, you did a good introduction. So thank you for that. Let's hit to the topic. I think the reason why we connected was because of German New Medicine, but also because I think I have a dog who I adopted, and because of the dog, I figured out how high sensitive animals are, and especially dogs with like a history. And I noticed my dog was completely tuned into me. So when I was sad, she was sad. When I was frustrated, she was going to act frustrated. And it actually really looked like a kid. You know, young kids, oftentimes moms say like, oh, my youngest is so annoying when I feel annoyed, you know. And so I think animals and kids, especially kids around younger than the age of 8, are like sponges, and they don't have a sense of self. So they often take on the emotions of other people or their owners. And I figured this through a very good friend of mine who is an animal speaker. And she taught me everything about what my dog was feeling. And it was so concise with what we were going through. And then I became so aware of the animal world and how we can intuitively train our dogs instead of like by the rules and by the books, but intuitively do that. So that's one part. But then I came across German New Medicine due to the disease of my stepdad, who unfortunately passed away. But because of his disease, I figured it all out. And then we were in contact, and you said, so can German New Medicine also help animals? And then I was like, yes, let's talk about it. I mean, you are completely into animals, so that's not my topic, but German New Medicine, and why it's interesting to talk about it is because it's basically biological laws in nature that explain symptoms and disease from the biological perspective. And so we are coming from nature. I mean, we are family of the apes. And so we also have this biological programming. And so German New Medicine is all about, in a very nutshell, before we go deeper into it. So when we lived in nature, and for animals, this is the same and still is, we need to work hard to survive, right? Because there can be predators everywhere. And if you don't stay with the pack, then you can die. And so the German New Medicine explains that when we are sick, and when we have signs of disease, we are not sick, but we are actually healing. And the symptoms that you are experiencing are special programs that help us survive traumatic events that are life-threatening in nature. So, for instance, let's say a deer is running for a lion. Yeah, it's running really hard. So it can die if it doesn't run faster. So it has difficulty breathing. So then the body of the deer is going to think, okay, we need to create extra cells in the lungs for you to take on more oxygen. So it's going to it's going to change into a super body to help the deer survive, right? So when the stress is over, and let's say the lion took another deer, you have to go back from that stress state back into a normal state. So what then happens is the deer is going to go from stress into peace. And then all the extra programs that we're running need to stop and needs to be reset. And this is coming with symptoms and with all kind of things. Where we say, like when this is with humans, we say something is wrong with us, we need to go to the hospital, but actually we are healing from stress. I hope this makes sense. I try to put it in a nutshell and compare it with animals a lot for you. So if you have any questions about that, please fire back at me. For me, it's completely common sense, but for most people, it's not. But I think in the end, what I try to explain with the deer and with humans, we are not different from animals. So when humans are experiencing a life-threatening situation, like for instance, I almost had a car accident and I'm like, oh, I'm like, oh, I'm going to die. And your body is experiencing that. And so the body is like, oh, you are almost going to die. We need to make extra lung cells for you to take on more oxygen so you can live. And so in that situation, that's happening. But when it's over, all those cells need to go back to normal. And that comes with disease. And often when you then go to the hospital because you feel sick, you are diagnosed with something horrible, so you're actually in a healing phase.
Okay, so then you might come down with like a cold or something where you have mucus in your lungs, where you're clearing out those old cells, for example. Would it be like that?
Definitely. Yeah. And there's a lot of fluid retention because, when we are healing, there's like, think about an ankle that you've broken, or I'm not sure what's the English word, but if you didn't break it, but if you, is it fractured?
A fracture, yeah.
Yeah. So oftentimes when it was fractured, when the stress was on, later on, you see the swelling coming up. The swelling is always there when you're healing, but the swelling also needs to get out. And so you see that there is a whole process going on. And this is with every single traumatic event in our body.
Okay, so then when people go to the doctor and the doctor probably prescribes them, 1, something for pain, 2, something to take the inflammation and swelling down, is that actually counterproductive to the body's healing?
Yes, I would say yes, but I also say now, please never take my advice. Always go to the doctor yourself first before you hear anything on this and you are going to decide to quit some meds. Never, ever do that. Always go to the doctor. But yes, naturally seen, it's not helping. I mean, medicine can help to relieve pain, but you are interrupting a healing phase. You are interrupting your body's natural processes.
Okay. Yeah. We'll just preface all this by saying none of this is medical advice. If you're on meds, you need to consult with your doctor.
Exactly.
About those medications. This is not like permission to just stop taking your meds, etc. Because that can also have ill consequences.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So this is really interesting because my personal view is that a lot of what we do in Western medicine, which can be very useful, and I'm not anti-medicine, but we are simply just treating symptoms and not finding the underlying cause. And actually, the reason I came to this conclusion was looking at how my dogs were being treated at the vet. And, a long time ago, I had a dog with chronic ear infections, and we would get medicated ear wash, and we would, she would get steroid injections at the vet's office. I mean, she was super inflamed in her ears. Yeah. And then I met a dog trainer who was feeding raw food. And as soon as I switched her to a raw diet, her ear infections completely went away and never came back. And the vet always said it's because she has moisture trapped in her ears because she likes to swim. And the thing was, I spent like a year up at my dad's house where this dog swam every day in a pond. And because she was on the raw diet, never had a problem. And so you would think, well, if she's swimming every single day and getting water in her ear, wouldn't that create the yeast? Yeah. And that wasn't the underlying cause. So the underlying cause was the diet. Yeah. And so I know that's not exactly the same of what we're talking about with traumatic events, but that's kind of how I came to understand that typically when you go to a vet, they want to treat symptoms instead of looking more at, okay, where is this actually originating from, which I think is kind of like what we want to explore today.
Yeah.
Which you already really explained beautifully, is that the body goes through some sort of trauma where it has to change some of its biological processes.
Yeah.
And then it has to recover from that.
Yes.
Okay, so Laurie, let's go into a little bit where German New Medicine originated from, or how it was discovered.
Yeah. So German New Medicine was actually a discovery done by Dr. Hammer, who was an internist at the oncology department in Munich. And 6 weeks after Dr. Hammer lost his son due to a very tragic event, a traumatic event, he was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And he intuitively thought, like, would there be a correlation between the loss of my son and the cancer diagnosis in the organ I created my son with? And so what he did, he started to talk about all the patients in his department that were on the, that had cancer. And he talked to every single one of them, and 100% had experienced a certain traumatic event before they were diagnosed with cancer. And so this was something they were already figuring out at that time, that traumatic events could cause disease. And so this was in the 1970s. And so, but then he thought, like, why do I have the testicular cancer and the other person breast cancer and the other person bone cancer? So at the time, a lot of doctors thought that disease was controlled by the brain. So he decided to make brain scans and talk to every single patient and then compare the brain scans to the story of the patient. And then he figured out that, for instance, people with lung cancer, they all had a similar conflict, a traumatic conflict experience, which was a death fright conflict, fear of dying. And so then he could see, like, in the brain on the scan, he could see concentric rings or like spots on the area of the brain that is controlling the lungs. And that is for every single person the same. So now it's becoming a law. So there is, like, every single one with lung cancer had the same spot in the same area. And they all had been going through a death fright conflict, that they were fearful of dying or something in that direction. And so what he figured after doing more and more and more research, and this was with all the other cancers exactly the same, is that cancer is completely controlled by the brain, and it originates from a traumatic event that happened to us. And the main reason for why the cancer is in our body, and in German New Medicine, we don't call it cancer, but we call it a special program to help us survive the death fright conflict or another conflict, is to help us survive, to help human species survive, to help us as a person survive. And you have to think about this, like, we're coming from nature. We exist of 1 trillion cells that are working perfectly fine together. Such an intelligent system. Why would there be so many defects? It's always helping us every single day to survive. So also in this case, when we experience a death fright conflict, then the body is like, we need to help this person to survive that conflict. And then it's when it's going to create extra cells. So in the lungs, so you can take on more oxygen. And so when the stress is over, you go back to normal, you get symptoms because all that stress needs to get out. And often then people go to the hospital and then they are diagnosed with horrible things. And of course, when you are diagnosed, there is another shock, traumatic shock. So another program starts running. And when he figured it, it completely made sense. And he wanted to present this to the medical faculty, but they denied it, even though they had usually they are obliged to listen to these kind of things, but they didn't, and they took away his doctor's badge and everything. And until this day, it's like put away. Yeah, this knowledge.
Wow, that's so interesting. Especially because I actually lost my mom to lung cancer. And I've read and heard and been told that, like, lung cancer is related to grief, but maybe it's more this fear of death, what you're talking about. And then I'm wondering, does the cancer then sort of like people who recover from cancer, have they recovered from their fear of death?
Yes, they have healed from their fear of death conflict. So they have healed it. And so, but this is hard because you go to the hospital, you are diagnosed, and the diagnosis causes even more fear. So you really have to live German New Medicine to do things on your own. And I also don't want to say here that you can do things on your own too loud, but like just have, if you're not sure what if the diagnosis is really what you believe in, just search into German New Medicine and see what you can do.
Yeah, I have also heard that, like, when the doctor says, oh, you have 3 weeks to live, or you have 6 months to live, or whatever, people actually die after the 3 weeks or after the 6 months. And so it's so mental. It's like what you believe becomes true.
It's your reality. And that's with Joe Dispenza wrote a book, You Are the Placebo. And this is where this is exactly written in too. I mean, there was a guy who was diagnosed with cancer, and then he asked the doctor, like, please, can I survive until after Christmas? And then this doctor knew about the placebo effect, and he said, yes, of course, we're going to take care of that. And so after Christmas, 2 days after Christmas, he died. And then they did the autopsy, but they didn't find any cancer. So it was the mental programming of the guy knowing he was going to die after Christmas. Like, these things, they are real, but it's still like they're put away as if it's magic, or it's just luck. And I think it's more important to start talking about these things so that people have options. I never say don't go to the hospital, never. If you feel that that's the way for you, do it. But if you feel that you need to discover other ways, and that you are not, if it just doesn't feel right, dive into this. And I think it will help you.
Well, I think it's also true, like, if you truly 100% trust and believe in chemotherapy and you go and you take the chemo,
Absolutely.
It will help you.
Absolutely. Yes.
So it's really, I feel it's exactly what you're saying, that it's really more what is true for that individual.
What is true for you. But what I like about German New Medicine instead of chemo is that when you choose chemo, and I have all respect for that if you do that, but you are not going to do the soul searching. So now, like, for instance, with your mom, let's say if she had known this, she might have figured out what conflict was going on, what pain she could resolve or heal from, and she could understand herself better, and so spiritually we will be growing by doing this work. We will heal on a soul level. And I think chemotherapy doesn't heal us from a soul level. It's just, treating from the outside.
Right. And her diagnosis was very severe. She was diagnosed at stage 4B, which is like the last stage. Yeah. So I think mentally, like, that got ingrained in her. Yeah, and then, you can't blame her. It's like, well, these are the stages and you're at the last stage. So it's like,
And also to give you, like, understanding the German New Medicine, which is basically the biological laws of nature, is that, like, that is part of life. That is also a biological thing that happens to all of us, just like birth. So some people just die, I think healing is also, oftentimes people think that healing is only let people live. But for instance, with my stepdad, he was also diagnosed with lung cancer, stage 4. At that moment, he had just a few days to live. That's what they said. Then I told him, hey, Andre, I think there is another way. Are you open? You have nothing to lose, open to dive with me into it, because I truly believe in all those things, and maybe we can see how far we come. And he agreed, and we started working. And the beautiful thing is, like, the moment I told him this, he couldn't breathe. And that night they wanted to put morphine. They wanted to give him some morphine because that's what they often do in the final stages, right? But then he said, no, I just want calming pills. And he was going to meditate all night, sitting up straight, because he couldn't breathe. Otherwise, he meditated all night, and he never meditated before. He didn't know what to do. So I explained it to him, like, start with that, and then we see from there where we go. And the next day he was another person. And so it wasn't that he was better, but you could see another person, and he still wanted to try it. And so we went on this whole journey. And unfortunately, just a month before he passed, I came across German New Medicine, and then I understood that was the puzzle I was missing. But then I went into a reading with a medium, and she immediately told me like that he told through her, like, Laurie, I was very angry at myself that he didn't survive. I was like, I've got all the tools, I believed in everything, and now he didn't survive, which was also pretty egocentric because it's his healing journey, not mine. But at that point, I wasn't aware of all of that. And so then he channeled through her, like, Laurie, you have a wrong understanding of healing. You healed me. You made me a better person into my next life. And he said, like, you made the passing so much easier because of all the things you taught me. You truly learned me to go inside. So it's not always about surviving. It's also helping someone who is going to pass to heal the parts that need healing before they leave the earth. And for them, it will be a blessing. So finding peace with that is very important too.
Right. So, I mean, my own personal spiritual belief is that the soul has a certain path to evolution. And if you heal and from whatever's ailing you and you survive that, that's great. Obviously, we all want to like continue living. Most of us do. But also, if you, like you said, if you do end up passing, your soul is then free to move on. So it's not like, oh, that was a failure.
No, that's how it felt for me. But then I think I had to learn that the hard way instantly, because at that point I thought I could heal him with all the things. And this is often what we think, is that people who are good at this stuff, they think I'm the healer. And I understand why we're saying that, but it's a person's own process and contract. And he also channeled through that woman, like, I wasn't meant to survive this. I was done. My life was over. I was happy, even though he wasn't aware of that, like, consciously when he was on this planet. For his life was over. He had everything he wanted. And my mom was his last. The love they had together was amazing. And he said that was all I needed, and I could leave. I left in love. So for his life was done here.
Right.
And it almost seemed like he did that past year of work together with me to help me on that path. It almost felt like we had a contract with the two of us, that he would help me come on this path of helping people, understand their natural ability to heal themselves. And so I think what's interesting to mention about his disease as well, because he had lung cancer, is that before he was diagnosed, he was really fearful of dying of COVID. And so he was a very open, free man. And suddenly he was hiding in a room, and we couldn't touch him. He was so scared to leave mom, and so scared of dying. And suddenly with Christmas, he gave me a kiss on the cheek, and I was like, hey, he's not scared anymore. It felt like he was relieved. He could let it go after 1.5 years or something. And 1 month later, he was diagnosed with lung cancer. So he was healing from a death fright conflict. And I understood this a month before he passed. But at that point, he was diagnosed with 20 brain tumors. And so it was over. But I felt like this is the key. And then when he passed, I was like, okay, Laurie, don't touch this. People will think you're crazy. But I felt in every cell of my body, this makes sense, And after a few months, I just felt I need to keep going. I need to spread the word, because it's way too important to hide it away out of fear what other people think of me, sharing this information.
Yeah, I think it's important to bring it forward. And okay, that is really interesting. So it's like once his emotional conflict was resolved, that's when he then got the diagnosis of the physical illness. And so is that typically how it works? Is that once emotionally or mentally you've resolved something, then you start seeing the symptoms of the healing process?
Yes, but the traumatic events, you have to see it as traumatic events that are life-threatening in nature, because it's not all emotional. Like it's the perception we give to those events, yes, but it's indeed, it can be when actually the physical event. So let's say you almost had had a car accident and that was over. So you go from stress into the healing phase, but it also can when you change mentally. So let's say you lost your job, you are very fearful now, what's going to happen? I can't feed my kids. But after a few weeks, you realize, hey, maybe this was a good thing because I need change in my life. And so your perception changes. And that is also when you start healing. So it's not only when the actual threat is over, but also when a mental threat is over.
Okay. Okay. So is it okay if I bring up an animal example?
Yeah.
Okay. So we had talked briefly just over email that one of my dogs has lymphoma.
Yeah.
And I kind of relate it back to this accident that we had with a bicycle where it was nighttime when we were walking and a bike ran into us and actually ran over the leash between us. And so my dog was like slammed to the ground, and physically she was okay other than just being bruised, but she was so severely frightened that then she got depressed and didn't want to go for her walks anymore.
Yeah.
And then after a few months, she like slowly came out of it and started wanting to walk again.
And then
I noticed the lumps on the neck.
yes. So, okay, that's interesting, isn't it? Because you saw, so there was this stress, she was getting depressed, and then she was getting back up, and you suddenly discovered the limbs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So she's in a healing phase of this accident. But what I also told you, it can be two things, because animals can also take on the emotions of their owners. So was there something going on in your life at that point that you were healing from, that she was healing from too? Or was it from that accident? So, but with the lymphoma you talked about, and I just wrote a few things down, I think I have it. The conflict that she experienced, what she is healing from is a self-devaluation conflict. So what that could mean in her situation, if it's coming from the accident, is like, I can't, because she was so scared of going out, it's like, I can't stay with the pack. I'm too slow. And in nature, that means if you're not able to go at the pace of the pack, you can die, right? So that's a conflict that could be running. But like I said, it could also be that you also said that there was something going on in your life that she picked up on and that she was healing from, that was in the same time frame. So that's what you have to figure out. And then also, I think German new medicine is not even finding the root cause. It's about understanding the processes, what are going on, so you can release fear. You just see now, okay, she's healing, so just let her do the healing work. And as an owner, stop being fearful and stressed, but let her just go through it, so that she can peacefully heal.
Okay, yeah. So I'm struggling a little bit the way you did with your stepdad of like, what can I do? So
Yes.
like, one day she was limping really badly and the lumps were really swollen. So I did take her to the vet, and I almost never take my dogs to the vet, but I was like, I want to make sure that we do whatever to make her comfortable because of whatever's happening. And she's limping now. So obviously there's some pain. Yeah. And so we got the official diagnosis, which my sister and I already basically guessed, like, that's what it was. And the vet wanted to kind of just like help me do hospice care and put her on prednisone. And I was like, no, I'm going to find the way to heal her, And so I went to a naturopath who specializes in cancer in animals. And he was actually quite surprised that she had lymphoma because she's been on a raw diet for like 7 years. And, we don't do vaccines or meds or anything like that. And he said, you've done everything right. So, sometimes this just happens. And I bought a bunch of supplements and started giving her the supplements. And then at a certain point, she started refusing to eat the food if it had supplements.
Wow.
And I mean, her appetite has gone up and down, and she's become very picky about what she eats. But it was kind of like, I felt like she was telling me, like, this is not what's going to heal me. Like, I don't need these supplements. You know what I mean?
Yes. And I don't want to debunk alternative ways also, but still, German new medicine says you are healing. So you don't need to treat anything. You understand what I'm saying? So still, treating cancer is treating something that we believe that shouldn't be there.
Right.
But what actually is going on, there's a program running helping him or her to survive the traumatic conflict. So there is no need to treat anything. Of course, you can give him some calming things, some CBD to make the process of healing easier. But trying to fight it is working against nature. And so this is also why alternative ways often don't work. Like, wait, that's not correct. They do work because there is also this belief system. But German new medicine is like, you don't need to fight anything. You just need to understand the body's processes. And so this is a mind shift for so many people, but it completely makes sense to me, at least. And so understanding what's going on in your dog now, if you understand it now, you can just let your dog heal. And I understand why you did what you did, because you didn't have this knowledge, and I would do the same. And honestly, if there's something wrong with my dog, it's close to your heart. So you're like, oh crap, you want to do everything in your power, even though it's not the thing that you believe in most. But so going there and then treating it, even though a raw diet, whatever, it doesn't matter what diet, it's just a program running.
Right.
I do think that diets are, healthy diets are very good for a system, because poisonous food also wants to go out. So also programs start running to get poison out of your system. So a healthy food definitely helps, but it's not a way to, in German new medicine at least, and I don't think you can relate it to the things that are going on in your body. I'm not saying that I don't want to, because I don't want to. Let's say I'm not a dietist, so I shouldn't burn my fingers to this. But for me personally, of course, you need to eat healthy, but food doesn't really matter in this process when you learn about GNM.
Yeah, I kind of keep going back and forth on it, because I have spoken to somebody who's kind of counseled and coached me, and she'll say things like, if you're really in touch with your higher spiritual self, you can eat Oreos and cheeseburgers and whatever, and it won't affect you. Like, if you believe that you're here just to simply enjoy life, and you do everything out of this 100% belief that, like, when I feel good and I do things that make me feel good, I'm going to be healthy and I'm going to be fine.
I agree.
Now, I don't feel good when I eat Oreos and cheeseburgers.
Me neither.
But
luckily, yeah.
I have, some family members who eat like that, or they eat at McDonald's and they smoke cigarettes and they do recreational drugs. And like, they're some of the healthiest people in my family.
Yes.
Which is so mind-boggling. And then somebody who might be super concerned about their health and seems
there we go. But that's the problem. The concern is the problem.
It's the problem. Okay.
Because they fear dying. I also had a story of a friend of mine. She had like a colleague working at her department, and she didn't want to sit with the smokers, but not like, she didn't want to be in like 100-meter area. She was fearful of getting something. She ate so pure because she was fearful of getting sick of whatever is in the food. And she was diagnosed with cancer and died of it, because that's how things are running. You get sick, you go to the doctor because you're fearful. So you go to the doctor, they will find something, and there you go. While other people who are not fearful, they just live. And if they feel that there's something going on in their bodies, they most likely they're like, oh, we'll be fine, I just need to give it a week or 2 weeks. And those are the people that are usually never really sick, or there's nothing wrong.
It's really interesting. So now what I'm wondering is kind of like what I understand from your experience with your stepfather, that like, as much as you helped him, he kind of also helped you on your evolution. Like, I feel like as much as I'm trying to help my dog, even though it doesn't seem to be doing anything, maybe she's going through this process to show me a different way, and to basically tell me, like, especially by refusing to eat the food with the supplements, like, hey, fighting this with, and I'm totally all for feeding a natural diet and supporting a healthy animal with whatever supplements you believe in and whatever. But she's basically saying, like, that's not what I need.
And trust them, because they are way more in tune to nature than we are. They don't have all this information. They know what's good for them. And that, I have also these, for my dog, I have these pate, it's like, but then the cheapy ones. and she will eat it one time, but she won't eat it more often because there's shit in it, you know? And so even though she likes it, I can tell at a certain point, and that was in the beginning, we just fed her this because we weren't really aware of what was in it. But then I see she doesn't want to eat it. And I care so much for my dog. I want to give her raw, you know, like natural stuff because I care for her. It's better for her tummy. It's better. She will feel better, you know? So yeah, that's interesting.
And then another thought I had when I was walking her, because the other day, you know, it's very up and down. Some days she feels really bad and doesn't want to do anything. Like there have been a couple days where like she got swollen and limping and I had to like carry her down the stairs. And then like 2 days later, she'll be feeling great. We went for like our longest walk that she's been on in like 6 months. And she acted like she had so much energy and like nothing at all was wrong. And I was like, wow, this is so crazy. It's like a huge emotional roller coaster for me.
Yeah.
But then I had this thought, I was like, well, kind of like what we were saying before, like when a human gets a cancer, like a very serious terminal diagnosis, and then they start to believe, well, this is it, you know, like I have 6 months, you know, but the dog doesn't know
how many months.
She doesn't know that she has cancer.
Yeah.
But so I'm like, well, she doesn't have to go along with this belief that the cancer is going to kill her. But is my belief and my worry that like, you know, because I look and it's like, well, usually when they're diagnosed with lymphoma, they have like 2 to 3 months. And like, is my projection of that going to make that true for her?
I can't foresee the future, but I would say just work on your own beliefs and take away the stress because she feels a lot. I mean, animals, you know that they feel a lot. So work on your fear. I also have now a mom who asked about her baby. Her baby had all like rashes all over the skin. And so this is a separation conflict. And she could tell me when the separation had taken place and what has happened. And then I also told her, listen, she's in a healing phase, but work on your stress because babies feel the stress of their mother. So, you know, if you work on your fear, if you work on your stress, they will heal much faster. And I believe that's with an animal too. And then I also told her, talk to them because we always think, yeah, babies, they don't understand or believe me, I have sessions with people where we go back and suddenly they remember that they were the first day they were on this planet. So all this information is stored in the subconscious. So just talk to your animal and talk. That's what I learned also from my animal whisperer. But also talk to your baby. If someone is listening now with a kid, tell them that they are fine, that they are healing from stress. You understand it. You are there to support them. That you will release the fear. You understand it now, and that you are there. Just you are there as a real good support, and that's what they need. Not being you know, like this around it.
Okay, so I think this is helping me more than I even realized that I needed help because I'm keeping like a whole diary every day of like what she'll eat and what she refuses to eat and what her bowel movement looks like. Cause I'm trying to figure out like, what am I doing? Like, let me figure out the answer.
Do you feel guilt towards her?
Yes.
No. Oh gosh, guilt. Yeah, she feels that.
So I should probably stop all that.
I always say do what feels right for you, but work on your internal programming now. If you feel guilty, she will feel that. You know, like that, and that's a very low vibration for you too. So just release yourself. You're doing the right thing, and don't be mad at yourself for doing all those things because you did it out of love. But now, once you understand German new medicine, and that is why I want to teach it to everybody. You can sit back. You can relax. You don't need to read every single book to understand it and then still have the feeling you're doing it wrong, you know, and just trust nature more. That's what I would say.
Okay, I think this is a big key to it because of, you know, what we had talked about previously, like if it was the bike accident, like I felt guilty about that because I felt like it was my fault. Like
there you go.
Like we weren't carrying a light and he would have seen us if we were carrying a light.
This is self-devaluation conflict. This is yours. You know,
so this is me feeling guilty.
Yes, and feeling, you know, you feel guilty about the whole thing. So it can be that she took on your whole self-devaluation conflict.
And now I'm spending all this money on like supplements and buying her different food every day because she won't eat. And then I feel guilty because it's like, well, I didn't go to the store today to get her something different that she would eat. And like, every other day I'm buying like 5 different kinds of raw food, cooked food, dog food, treats, dehydrated food. And like, I'm obsessing over it.
Yes. And she feels that. And she's just showing you now by not eating it or by throwing it out or something. You said like, hey, owner, I don't need this. Just trust me, and you're doing it out of love. So I understand it. And most people will do this. But if you live G&M, you don't need all the external things, even though I think natural food is good. I give it to my own dog too. Give them the best. I feed myself the best things. Well, not always, but you know what I mean? I try to give myself the best. I smoked, and there was a certain point that I was thinking, if I just smoke a few cigarettes a week and I'm okay with it, what matters? But then I was like, no, in the end, it's toxic that I put in my body, right? So that's not self-love. That's not self-care. Let's not do that. That I don't think that spiritually that's the best thing to do. So these decisions you can make. But did I think I would get lung cancer from smoking? No, I didn't. And if I would, I knew what to do because I knew the processes that were going on. If I thought it would from smoking, but I knew it wouldn't. Because think about this. Why can some people smoke for 80 years and not die of it? And they just feel very happy and confident and whatever. And they don't care about smoking. And others are 50 and get lung cancer because most of them are smoking like, crap, I'm smoking. I want to get rid of it because most likely I'm going to die if I keep going, but I can't stop. That process, the fear of dying of smoking is, in my opinion, worse than smoking itself.
That's just so interesting because my uncle smokes cigarettes and I think he's probably smoked since he was like in middle school or high school. I don't know. I've not asked him, but just throughout his whole life, he's smoked. And he's like 75 now, I think. Perfectly happy, seems to be perfectly healthy, retired to Mexico. And then my mom at 51 got the exact cancer that smokers get, but she never smoked.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's mind-boggling. It's like, well, how can that person smoke for 50, 60 years and be totally healthy? And then my mom, who never smoked, get that exact type of cancer. So it's starting to make sense now.
Yeah. And then they say, it's just bad luck, or it's in the genes but genes are also something, if you have heard of epigenetics, like genes change from the external environment. Like genes, it's not like, oh, because mom had something, I get it definitely too, It's like limiting beliefs that run into families that show as physical symptoms, that is what's going on. And so, also with smoking, I completely believe that your uncle is completely healthy,
he seems fine.
He is fine. But then you have all those smokers who feel so guilty that they're smoking and they're so scared of dying of smoking. And I believe those are usually the people that are diagnosed with cancer.
Got it. Okay, so let's bring it around back to the animals.
In terms of animals, like I said, like when they're sick, and what you said, like with your animal, they wanted to put her in hospice care. Well, I would first try to understand German new medicine before you agree to that, because you're putting a dog down that just is healing from a traumatic conflict shock. And I think that is very helpful for people. And it also would take away the fear when there's something wrong, that you first do some research before you're like acting out and you give medication and stuff like that. But like I said, always do what feels right for you. If you feel that you need to go to the vet, do it. And about the emotional part, indeed, EFT is very, very helpful to work on the owner. And also, for instance, with you, all the guilt that you have towards your animal, with EFT, we can ensure that all that guilt is gone, so that you don't, because it's harder, it's easier said than done to consciously say to yourself, okay, I need to release the guilt, but the guilt is most likely stored in your subconscious very deeply. So you can only take it away, in my opinion, with working with the subconscious mind, and that is what EFT does.
Okay, and that's where you physically tap on the body.
Yeah. So you physically tap on a body, you have a few points. And by tapping on those points, you make contact with your amygdala, which is your fight or flight response, or the reptilian brain. And by doing that and doing mental activities, you release limiting beliefs or emotions that are at the root of your problem. So, for instance, with you, I would go back to that moment that that accident happened. And we go through every single, you have to really step into it with your eyes closed, step into it as if you're there again. And we're just going to stop at every emotion that you feel. And we're going to release it using EFT so that memory doesn't feel so intense anymore, and you don't feel that much guilt anymore. And maybe even you created in that memory the limiting belief that you're a bad owner, which will then start to, like, when that is planted, it's going to make itself bigger, because limiting beliefs are always, the subconscious is always finding proof for that limiting belief. So you will find proof and you will start creating a problem. It might even interrupt your working system, like, oh, I'm a bad owner, but I'm an animal coach, and now I'm not even can take care of my dog, so how, all those mental programs we humans have. So yeah, that could be
that's
really
interesting. Yeah, a lot of that has happened, actually. I think we'll wrap up shortly, because I think this is a good introduction, and then you and I can decide if we want to do another episode on the EFT, or some other case examples. But I think that is another example of where it overlaps with this idea of physical memory, that Kevin Behan used to always tell me. The dog doesn't consciously have thoughts or memories or intentions, but they have physical memory of everything that's happened to them in their life, like a record that's written in the body. And I believe the same is true for us, and exactly what you were saying, like mentally, it's very difficult to be like, oh, just let it go. It's like, but it's really trapped in your cells, and the body is holding that. So that's also, why in our type of training, we work with a lot of physical exercises that are almost like a somatic experiencing for dogs.
Good.
Letting them push and letting them bark and letting them bite and carry things. And so they're kind of like acting out the emotions that need to be processed.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to like suppress their energy and train them not to do stuff, we're like, oh, you feel upset.
Right.
Okay, here, let's play tug, and you can get that anger out on the tug toy.
Yeah.
So I think that's where there's another really strong connection with, what you do with these different healing modalities. And that's also why, you inspired me to change the name of the podcast to the Somatic Hound, to just emphasize that these are things that are trapped in the body.
Yes.
So I just want to say thank you for your time today. I think this is a huge topic, and a lot of my listeners will be hearing about it for the first time. So I don't want to completely overwhelm them with too much information.
Me neither. Maybe we did already, but yeah.
I think it was good. So let's wrap it up, and then you and I will talk about maybe doing some future episodes.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Laurie.
Thank you too. See you later.
All right, take care. Thank you for listening, everyone. I really appreciate it. You reached the end of this episode, and I just hope you enjoyed it and were able to take in some new information and, really ponder what's going on when we get sick, when our animals get sick, what are symptoms, what is an illness actually, what is a disease, and how can we look at it through maybe a different paradigm. And Laurie has helped us to do that today. If you're interested in learning more about Laurie, she does have a website, which you can find at lauriejanssens.org. And it's Laurie, Laurie, and it's Janssens, although in the US we would say Janssens. It's JANSSENS.org. So it's Laurie, LaurieJanssens.org. She's also on Instagram and Facebook, and she's offering coaching and education. So I will put all of that in the show notes for you. So look her up, follow her on social media, and definitely inquire about a coaching session with her if this has piqued your interest. As always, thank you again for listening to the Somatic Hound podcast. Please subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Share with a friend who might find this useful. And if you'd like to rate and review us on Spotify or Apple, that would also be greatly appreciated. I'll talk to you in the next episode.